And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much that you wanted to come back for more. Folks, that was a brilliant move. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this is the podcast that is about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And our guest today is, amongst a lot of other things, also, wait for it, a podcaster. See, you are brilliant. You figured it out. Here we go. Folks, this is the place where we all come together to raise each other up as podcasters, and this is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing. I have had the absolute pleasure of interviewing this gentleman for one of my other shows, and when we got done with that show, I was like, Brent, I've got to bring you on this other podcast. I'm going to send you some info. If you like it, let's get you on the show. And he gave in. He said, you know what? All right, let's do this show. So here we are.
I think it was because you needed a bad example of how podcasters do their work.
Listen, I haven't even finished the intro. He's starting it already. All right. This guy is an accomplished author. He's got, a lot of books out there. We're going to be talking about one in particular today called Hard Boiled Cabbage, which we're going to hear about here in a minute. And he is the host of this really neat podcast he's putting together called LightMinded Arts Podcast, which we're also going to get into. Folks, please welcome to the show, Brent Lindstrom. Brent, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Man, we had one heck of a day trying to get each other together and get on the show, didn't we?
Yeah, you tried getting me up at 3:30 in the morning to come on your show.
Folks, and I know we have a lot of podcasters who listen, and a lot of you also use Podmatch, like we do for a lot of things. Folks, when Podmatch messes up your scheduling or there's any kind of glitch or anything, you all know what we deal with. And I thought this was at like 5:30 in the morning. And
It would have been 3:30 my time,
your
and
time, right? So I'm sending Brett an email going, hey, I know you're not a no-show guy, so this must be a mistake. He wakes up and he's like, Rory, what are you talking about? What are you doing, man? But we
yeah.
finally did it. We finally hooked up. Here we are. And Brent, tell everybody a little bit about who is Brent Lindstrom. You are the From Hammer to Hollywood guy. Tell everybody, what that's about, what you're about, and what brings you here, man.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, that's my thing. Hammer to Hollywood. I own LightMinded Arts, which is a production company. It's where I also publish all my books from. I'm a writer, filmmaker. I claim From Hammer to Hollywood because when I was in the construction field not too long ago, in fact, I still dabble, but about about 11 years or so ago, I was doing a lot of construction and I said, you know what? I am really liking writing books. I started trying to do it as a side job. Obviously, it didn't make me any money at the time because I didn't have my craft up, but I thought I want to do this instead of swinging a hammer all the time. And so I put together a plan. I put together a 10-year plan that says, this is what I'm going to do to level up my craft and to become financially independent so that I don't have to be a struggling artist when I start doing all my writing. And along the way, I got pretty interested in visual storytelling too, not just the written style. And so, yeah, I added that onto my list of things that I needed to learn. And over that 10-year period, I was able to not only build up my craft and learn the filmmaking industry, but I was also able to get myself financially independent and in a spot where, yeah, I don't have to be a struggling artist. I can do what I love to do. And now I'm 1 year into it and I'm having the time of my life.
Wow. All right. 1 year into it. That's fantastic. I mean, most folks don't make it a year doing this sort of thing. So I got to be honest with you. That's a huge accomplishment. Congratulations.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, I know you've got a bunch of books that are out there. You wanted to talk about one in particular today, Hard Boiled Cabbage. Tell us about that
Yeah.
one. And I can't wait to hear about the title. I mean, come on.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
getting hungry listening to it.
So, for your viewers out there, I'm showing you to the camera. For those of you who are just listening, it's called Hard Boiled Cabbage. It is book one in my Gearlock series, which this is fun. I haven't really gone through and done a full-on fantasy world before in any of my novels until this one. And this isn't your typical elves and dwarves and that kind. I'm not doing Tolkien style fantasy here, but I wanted to do a really gritty noir styled fantasy, something that Raymond Chandler would be proud of
Mm,
if he
okay.
was into fantasy. So I did the Gearlock series. It kind of takes place in between the sword and sorcery era of fiction, right as it's turning into steampunk fiction. But yeah, it explores the world of a hard-boiled detective as he navigates this fantasy world and solves problems. It's
Nice.
really kind of
Nice.
fun. I'm excited about it. It's going to be like a six book series.
Okay, wonderful. I've had a chance to read some excerpts from one of your other books. You are an incredibly descriptive writer. I mean, you just really you pour into that. I think I read like 2 pages, and I already could just picture the entire scene. I knew exactly where I was at. We were talking about like these kids and this pond and everything else that was going on, but it was almost like this light was just shining really brightly in my mind because I could see every little color. I could almost smell it the way you were talking about it all. Um, do you do that in all of your books, or was that pretty much this one? How does your writing style change when you go from this genre over here to a totally different, uh, you know, genre, for lack of a better word?
Yeah. Yeah, so when I first started writing, I wrote under a different name because I knew that my first novels would probably not be up to par. And in those books, no, it's not descriptive. It's not what you had read. In my books that actually have my name assigned to them, yes, I try to do that because I I had the privilege of having a guy named Dave Wolverton or David Farland. It depends on which books you're reading of his. He's a best-selling author, but I had the opportunity for him to review or to edit my books, or at least a couple of them early on. And he was really instrumental in helping me capture all the different senses in my book so that I could actually transport a reader to wherever I was talking about. And I get a lot of advice from every editor I ever use. I make sure I pick their brains. I get my money's worth out of them, but I'm always trying to up my craft. And that was one of the things that you're talking about that I learned from him was just really involving every aspect of the world so that you could completely immerse yourself in it. And so,
Yeah.
it hasn't been forever, but it's been in the recent books.
Nice, nice. I want to make sure I point that out to folks because I mean I do a lot of reading. I want to say probably nothing like what you do, but I do my fair share of reading, and if it's not the Bible or something like that, and I'm reading different types of books, uh, it stood out to me because I don't really feel like that sort of detail and thought and heart is put into those things. I can feel it when people are doing with their dialogue, and things like that, or maybe their character development. But when people put that into the setting, then you just know that it's like dripping into everything else too. So seriously, I want to make sure that I compliment you on that almost every time I talk to you. I think I'm going to probably do that because as a
Appreciate
reader,
it.
it really makes a difference. It's noticeable. Why do you think people don't do that anymore?
Uh, I don't know how much they do or don't do. I would say that a lot of people do, but I think there's also a tendency to uh, probably not do it because maybe their craft isn't up there. Like if they're a best-selling author, I think there's going to be a lot of that in there. I know that I read a lot of books by new authors that
Mhm.
they just haven't leveled up their craft yet, or maybe they've relied a little bit too much on AI, or maybe they've had the AI try to add that in, it just doesn't sound right. But I would say that if there's not a lot of people doing it, it's probably because it's not easy.
There you go.
And it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. I usually go through at least 12 drafts of every one of my books before I have it publishable ready.
Nice.
Publishable ready. That's not even a word. Publish ready. There we
Publishable
go.
read.
Publish. I make up a lot of words with my wife. She gets really annoyed with that.
It's almost like we got up at 5:30 in the morning or something.
You think so?
We're trying to get through it. Yeah, no, I love it, man. Now you touched on it a little bit in your intro, and I appreciate that. But you haven't had the easiest story about getting here to where you are. Do you want to tell anybody a little bit about kind of like where you came from? Because I mean, you've got a powerful story of, I've had enough to, here we go.
Okay, so yeah, you're probably talking about kind of my living circumstances before I started putting this plan together. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was, yeah, little before I started this whole journey, I was living in one of the more ghetto places in Utah. I mean, you don't think of Utah and ghetto in the same, I guess, the same thought usually,
Sure.
especially if you've visited here. You see the beautiful mountains, the skiing, and different things like that. But there's a couple pockets where uh, we, for instance, we knew our police officer better than we knew our mailman. That's
Oh,
how
wow.
often they were coming to our area of town there. And we didn't have to give an ambulance whenever we called 911. They just said, "Oh, you're in the meadows. Okay, we're on our way."
Uh,
And so they were very familiar with
wow.
it. And at the time, I wasn't making very much money. I had just joined up with my dad's company, and I was doing that for a couple of years, and I was making, for me it felt good. It was $45,000 a year, and I thought, you know what? I've hit it. But then I got married, and then I had my kid, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to raise my kids in this environment, and I want to make more money because 45,000, not bad for raising one, but when you've got multiple people, there was three of us at that time. We had plans for more. I said, you know what, I need to do something different. So I did. I said, you know what, I'm gonna try this writing gig and see if I can do that because I was already working 12 hours a day. My wife didn't want me out of the house any more than I absolutely had to be out. And so yeah, I decided to try the writing gig and I got addicted. And then that kind of led to that whole 10-year plan that I told you about.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then fast forward to today when I'm actually doing it. And just so you know, I'm a very values-driven guy. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I really take a lot of those beliefs that I have to heart, and I love them. And part of being financially independent and feeling like I've been blessed with that was like, well, what do I do with this? Because yeah, I want to tell stories, but at the same time, how do I show God that I'm thankful for everything He's blessed me with? And I thought, you know what? I don't want to be preachy to anybody. I don't want to push my faith on anybody. What I would rather do is I'd rather create fiction, something that can be entertaining, but for people with similar values as mine. And I know there's got to be a lot of them out there. They don't
Mm.
want to sit down and watch all the sexual content that's in Hollywood today or read about it. They don't want to have their ears full of profanity, especially if their kids are coming to watch with them,
Yeah.
or if they just kind of happen to come down for a drink and they see what you're watching. For me, I almost felt like I needed a mission to create entertainment both in my books and on screen that was value driven but still entertaining for adults. And so that's kind of how I developed light-minded arts. It's a play on words, light-minded. So light is in we're not doing anything too dirty or PG, maybe mild PG-13 kind of stuff and all of that. And then also light as in you think cinema, it's painting with light, and so there's that. And then also light-minded arts, I don't take myself too terribly seriously most of the time, and so I like to just have fun with my stories, and a lot of them have humor in them, and so that's kind of where I've branched to, just trying to build a faith, not I guess not faith-based, but a values-based system of entertaining people.
Love it. Love it. And, I've never actually heard that particular version of that story. So I'm really glad I asked you that question. Thank you for, sharing all that. That was huge.
No,
Thanks for putting
thanks.
that out there, brother. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, somewhere in the middle of all this, I mean, you're writing books. You've decided, hey, I'm going to make extra money. I'm going to, try and lift myself up, my family. And you decide that you're going to put out a podcast. And
Yep.
so it is the Light-Minded Arts Podcast. It's fairly new. You started it this past year, right? 2025.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So tell me, what was sort of the impetus behind, a guy who's been doing all his writing? What makes you go, hey, now I'm going to go do a podcast?
I don't think my wife would ever accuse me of just sitting back and taking the easy route on anything. I think it's like my superpower. I always do everything the hardest way, the first time, every time. So I
You're not
kind of fell
alone.
into the podcasting. Um, So when I first got going, I knew that I wouldn't sell my books right away. I knew that I'd have to build up an audience. And so I said, okay, so how am I going to build up an audience? And since I wanted to do the filmmaking thing too, YouTube was the obvious go-to. Okay, yeah, I want to write books. I want to create a visual format. YouTube's a visual format. I can do that, build up an audience, and talk about my books occasionally at the same time. And if you've ever done YouTube, like seriously done YouTube, you know that it takes a little while to build up your voice and things and get that all honed in. And so yeah, I've been on that journey of improving my YouTube channel and slowly building that to where I want it. But along the way, I thought, you know what? I also need to get my voice out there other ways. And podcasting, I don't know where I even thought of podcasting, but maybe it was an ad from Podmatch that showed up, and I said, hey, maybe if I go to Podmatch, I will be able to let other people know about my books and my YouTube channel. And so I started doing that. And then along the way, I started noticing this little icon at, kind of midway down on Podmatch. It said, this person is a guest and a host. And I thought, what if I became a guest and a host?
Hmm.
So then I thought, well, no, I'm not going to do that. That's too much, too much. I've got too much going already. I'm writing all morning, handling business, my investments and things. In the afternoon, I'm working solely on YouTube. I don't have time for a podcast. So I started a podcast. And at first,
Okay.
it was just so that I could bring guests onto my YouTube channel. Because I mean, there's nothing really like Podmatch for YouTube, but I started really enjoying doing it. I started talking to these people, and I was like, you know what? This person is super interesting, and I'm learning things from them. And sometimes I'll get a profile of somebody, and I'll be like, oh man, why did I match with those guys? What am I going to ask them? What am I going to talk about with them? And then I get into the interview, and suddenly I'm in there talking to them for an hour and a half, and I'm like, I got to end this thing, but I'm having such a good time talking to them. And the podcasting thing turned out to be just a really fun and fruitful way to expand my horizons. And yeah, I do publish them up all on the podcast platforms and everything, and I've been publishing them also on YouTube. But yeah, it's become something that I didn't expect it to be, I guess.
Awesome. All right. I've listened to a bunch of your episodes at this point. And you've done some cool things. I want to make sure I point these out.
I
The
don't know how you
first,
have the time to listen to me. You're busy.
hey, got to do your research now. Come on, man. No, but I was listening to your first episode that was on Spotify, and you interviewed your wife.
I did.
You brought your wife on. And first, let me just tell you, incredibly smart move because, having inviting her on so that she could talk about like how she feels about what you're doing in this, this move you're making and everything. Very wise to, involve her at that point, but it was also a really good interview. She's kind of a natural guest, isn't she?
She is, and my sister-in-law told me, she's like, if you're looking for your voice on your show, just bring her on. No one cares about you. They want to listen to her.
Nice. Now, was that the first interview you had ever done then?
Um, for a podcast, yes. For just interview's sake, no.
All right. So you're interviewing people not for a podcast somewhere in the world.
So one of my things, I mentioned that I did the construction thing, Hammer to Hollywood thing. So I have a business that I ran with my family for a while there, and I'm still a little bit of a part of it, but it's a real estate development company. And I would go through and do the marketing for that. So I wrote all the blogs for it. I did a lot of things like that. I even did some commercials for it. And among those commercials was interviews of people we had sold our homes to.
Oh,
And
okay.
so yeah, I would throw a big party. I'd go through, I'd do the whole, videoing of the party and everything, just make a good video. But then I actually sat down in an interview style and I'd interview these residents and I talked to them about their experience of buying from our company. And so yeah, that was probably my first experience with actually interviewing people.
Brilliant. I on this show, I'm always telling people that if you're in business in any way, shape, or form, where you're either a sole proprietor or you are a small business owner or you're an independent contractor, of any kind, builder, that type of thing, you need to have a podcast. You absolutely need to have a podcast just for the sake of your business. And that's one of the things that I love hearing people do. Why get a testimonial, a little paragraph written up when you can actually interview somebody and have that be the testimonial? I love hearing that. So you guys were ahead of the time.
Yeah, we ended up putting it up on our website, up on
Wow,
YouTube. It ended up getting turned into audio. It started running on some of the local TV programs, and so, yeah, so we was able to get it out there.
beautiful, beautiful.
I
Well,
actually ended up getting some complaint letters from the not the people we interviewed, but their kids saying, "Hey, you need to start paying our parents something for this good interview you just did with them." I'm like, "Well, they agreed that we would just, they were doing this to help us, So it was kind of fun.
yeah, the kids today, man, everything is monetized,
Some
right? So
people's kids.
views matter. I love that. All right, so but you start off with your wife, and I could tell that it wasn't your first interview. That's why I asked. So I'm like, either this guy really practiced, or this is something he's done before, because you weren't like tripping over yourself or trying to figure out what the next question was. It was a good interview that I heard
I
from
still
you
trip
folks.
over myself all the time, though. It's like my other superpower.
Another really cool thing that you did, and I wanted to ask you about, was that you had a guest on that surprised me, and that was you had a character from one of your books
Oh,
as
yeah,
a
that one.
guest. Dude, that was so creative. Tell me how you did that and what went into that.
Okay, so I was bedridden for probably about 4 months out of this year because
Ouch.
I had foot reconstruction surgery once in April and then once in September. And so I couldn't really get out of the bed and go film any videos or do anything like that. To have an interview with me sitting there, pillows all around me, pill bottles here, that it wasn't really something that I wanted to do. So I had done some different things, trying to build up a supply of things to get me through that time that I was going to be bedridden, but I couldn't just sit in bed and do nothing. And so I I used that time to play around with the AI tools that are available, and I basically cloned myself as a couple different things, did some visual things with it, and I got on 11 Labs and I did some voice changing things. I actually produced a radio drama at the time too, but I ended up putting together an interview with that character. I used AI. I uploaded my book and had AI basically answer all the questions as if it were my character. And so, yeah, I would ask the questions. He would answer back. I'd record those, get them changed over. And yeah, it was just kind of a big experiment with AI, but also kind of a book trailer type thing. You trying to find a way to help people get a feel for the world of the book. And that interview that you heard of was actually this book that I told you about earlier, that hard-boiled cabbage.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. And the name was a detective, right?
Yeah, a detective. His name was Dick Humar.
There you go. All right. I was listening to that going, man, this is really creative. I heard that this morning and I'm going, man, all right, I got to ask him about this. Because I was up at 3, getting ready for the interview at 5.
Yeah, I just
So
wanted to give you extra time to prep.
I appreciate it. Here's an extra 12 hours.
Yep.
Um, but all right, so you've done some creative things. You start with your wife, which was a great move, great momentum going forward. I know that the idea behind the podcast, just from what you've told me, in large part is to, help market the books. I mean, the podcast is a great marketing arm, for what you're doing, brand building and things like that. But you've had other guests on there
Yeah, I have.
as well.
And so when I started doing this, I had to basically figure out an angle because who wants to watch a YouTube channel or listen to a podcast that is just me advertising my books?
Sure.
I can't imagine who would want. I wouldn't want that. And so I had to think, what would endear an audience to me and my stories, but also how could I create value for them? And at the time, I thought, you know what? I have figured out how to be financially independent as an artist. And I know there's a lot of people out there who either want to write, paint, do film, music, different things like this, who they don't know how to break away from the 9 to 5 job. They don't know how to basically support the art that is driving them, that they're passionate about. And for a while, I mean, it took me 10 years to figure it out. I reinvented the wheel for me at least, and I didn't even read Rich Dad Poor Dad until I was probably at like year 8 of my plan, and I'm like going through that. I'm like, huh, that there's a lot of good stuff in there. Too bad I didn't read that earlier. But I've got so many other books that I read, and that was just kind of one that was on the sideline. I was like, I'll get to that one. I'll get to that one. And but no, there were so many other books that I got so much out of it. And throughout this whole time, I was thinking, you know what? I've I've got something that I've learned, and it's not just that book, but through all my experience, I know a lot about real estate. I'm a finance guy. I went to college for finance, got my MBA. One of my favorite classes was corporate finance, which everyone else in my class pretty well, they hated it. But I just love finance, so I'm into the stock market, the futures market, trading options and stocks and different things, and I've done a little angel investing, and it's kind of like I've got something of value for people, especially artists. And, the artists, if they find value in what I teach them, they might come and support me by reading my books. Maybe they'll become fans, maybe not. I don't know. But that's where I felt my value chain was. And then when I started doing the pod match, I geared most of those conversations towards how they could help these struggling artists become a working creative. And so I interview a lot of authors on my podcast, and I make sure I ask them, I'm like, you know what? How would you have done this if you were fresh out of high school or something, and you didn't know how you were going to support your art, but you knew that's what you were called to be doing? Or I'll talk to other people, just, maybe people in the industry, editors. I think I interviewed a musician earlier today, a Christian musician, and was talking to him about how his journey went, and, supporting your family through all this. And so, yeah, I'm trying to get a lot of other people's perspectives, because I'm tunnel vision. I got my narrow focus, but there's a lot of people with a lot of good advice out there, and I think that's where the value is not just my opinions on things, but getting everybody's collective experiences.
Yeah, for sure. I love that that's the direction you're going. As you move through the episodes, you can kind of see that you start heading in the direction of, hey, I'm helping entrepreneurs, I'm helping people who are trying to start their own thing, helping people who are trying to maybe build a side hustle based on their beliefs and their interests and their talents. And you can kind of sense that happening, in the podcast as you go. The How do you go about deciding who you're going to have on the podcast then? What purpose are you trying to serve with the people you bring on?
So when I find people, if anybody expresses interest or anything, I'm looking first and foremost for artists. And I get a few that are retired on there, but I look more towards people who are working artists. And because if you're retired, you've got a financially secure stream of income. Usually it's some kind of retirement that you've built up somehow, whether through military or your jobs, whatever it is. But I don't want everybody to feel like they have to wait until they're 65 or older to start their artistic career. I want people to know that if they want to start it fresh out of high school, they can. I want people to know that if they're fresh out of college, or maybe they've got a couple of kids and they just got fired from their job, how do we help you develop into the artist that you want to be? And so I'm looking for anybody who can basically shed light on that. And I look for every different angle, every different perspective. And sometimes it'll be life coaches, business coaches, it'll be, just financial gurus, just anyone who has any experience with becoming financially independent. And some don't. I interviewed one amazing actor, and he was having his parents help him support his artistic career at the time, and he was doing other things to work on that too. But yeah, it's interesting to see how other people accomplish this as well.
Nice. Nice. Great answer. And I love the vision that you're putting out there for it. When it comes to the podcast, how do you go about promoting the podcast? What types of things are you doing to get the word out about the podcast and about your books?
Well, this part is not as easy, and I'm still learning it. As you may know, I've recently started the podcast, and so I kind of learn as I go. But one of the big things is having the people who join it share it with their social contacts,
Sure.
and that helps. That gives it a little bit of a bump. I haven't seen a huge return off of that. I mean, I'm not monetized, so by return, I'm not meaning actual money coming in. I'm talking about viewership or subscribers. But I see a little bit of that, not a ton. One thing that I've been working on doing is when I have a fiction author come on, and this is a fairly recent development. I tried to do my homework like you too. I'll read their books and things before they actually join the show so that I
Hmm.
can actually approach their art from a perspective of knowing. But a lot of them they do really good work, and maybe they're at a same situation where I am, where not many people know who they are yet. And so I will actually, especially if their books are any good, I will give them an invite later on to join an anthology that I've decided to put together. They write a
Oh,
short
okay.
story and then they give that book for free out to all their people. And then those books, if somebody picks it up, they maybe get it for their short story, but then they read all these short stories by other guests I've had. And then they can create kind of a network of, oh, well, I like them, but who's this other guy? I don't know, this Chris Coate guy or something, whatever. And so they'll go look him up maybe. And so that's kind of the idea of how I've tried to provide a little extra service for them, but that I don't necessarily know that that actually helps with my podcast gaining viewership.
Okay.
Um, I do mention it a lot in my YouTube videos, but obviously my YouTube channel is still in its infancy and been working on getting a base for that also and finding my voice for one. So
Right.
yeah, I'm really at the beginning stages of a lot of this. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I've got anything really figured out yet. I mostly just pursue things that seem like they would add value because I feel like adding value is pretty important, but the marketing aspect of it, I still struggle a little bit trying to figure it all out.
Very honest answer. Totally understand. Marketing and promotion is one of the hardest things for podcasters to figure out. I mean, I teach like four different classes on that sort of thing because everybody needs something different too. There isn't like one cookie cutter thing that, oh, well, if you just do this, then it works for everybody. No, that's nonsense. It doesn't work that way. Everybody's podcast is totally different. Everybody's podcast has its own unique sort of swing and flavor, and it also has its own unique plan on how to grow it. So, you're trying to find that, and that makes sense to me. So that's cool. When you do your podcasts, are you doing the video and the audio, and then putting the video on your YouTube channel, or have you not gotten to that point yet?
Yeah, so I am. Yeah. And I started out just posting the video on YouTube also. I mean, I'm posting it both places,
Sure.
um but I was finding that posting an hour-long video of kind of like these Zoom calls was really not gaining any traction at all. And I started thinking, well, why not? I mean, I see this with some established YouTubers. They'll have that, an hour-long thing where they're interviewing each other, and for whatever reason, maybe just because I'm an unknown so far, is it just wasn't clicking with anyone. They'd maybe watch 1 minute of it and then it was done. The
Hmm.
nice thing about YouTube is you get all the analytics. And
Right.
so recently I've decided to start changing how I do this. And so I go on YouTube and I actually do about an hour long interview with people.
Hmm.
And then I will go through and I will break that YouTube or that podcast into multiple segments and try to find the most relevant things in about 8 to 15 minutes that I can create a more engaging YouTube video around.
Right.
And then at the end of that, I'll be like, hey, if you want to catch the whole interview, jump on over to my podcast and you can catch the whole thing there, you know? And so that's kind of how I've been moving lately towards doing these things and I've been liking the quality of the YouTube videos more and more as I've been developing them and I'm on my third interview doing it that way now and so it I think it'll provide a better value for YouTube whether or not that helps create more engagement there driving it back to the podcast I'm not entirely sure yet.
That's a great idea, and you're way ahead of the pack right now. That's some advanced stuff right there. I that's one of the things I teach people, and I love that you just kind of came up with this all on your own. You're like, hey, it's a really big episode, so let's break it down into bite-sized chunks, and we'll send those out. If somebody has a 30-minute interview, they could break that into what is it, six pieces that are 5 minutes long, and then put those out. And it's amazing what happens to your viewership then. If people like one of them, then they go watch another one. Then maybe they watch another one.
Turns
Maybe they
into a
like the whole
binge.
thing, they'll go watch the long form. But
Yeah.
there's everybody has their own thing that they're comfortable with. But just that you're already thinking that way, that's that creativity thing that you have going. So anybody who
Well, that's
interviews his
also that
wife,
doing everything the hard way the first time every time, you know.
well,
I don't really listen to anybody. I just I make it up as I go and reinvent the wheel each time.
there are easier ways to do that.
There
Yeah.
are. I wish I would ever learn that lesson.
Sure. Well, I just want to make sure I'm being encouraging and giving you kudos though, because that's an advanced technique. If we're getting the podcast out there, so good job, man. I like that. Now you mentioned you hadn't monetized yet, and there's a billion different definitions to monetizing a podcast, right? Because you make money from your books. And so if the podcast is helping with the books, you are making some money there. So technically there's a monetization going on with
Right.
that whole project. Podcasting can either be the main pillar, of the project you're building, or it can be one of many pillars in a foundation you're building. And
Right.
so, with what you're doing, it seems like the podcast is one of many pillars that you're putting together. And it
Yeah.
sounds like books and a podcast. Do you do any public speaking or anything like that?
No, I haven't done any public speaking.
No? Okay. I mean,
Nope.
you seemed like you would be good at it. So,
The
um,
most public speaking I do is in church.
there you go. Courses that you're offering for any of this stuff yet?
I haven't offered any courses. No,
Okay.
I've been still trying to build up an audience and giving it all away for free.
Okay. The thing that you are doing, which is another kind of piece of the foundation, is that you're starting to put together a community with your anthology.
Yeah.
So, building a community of some kind is huge for podcasters, especially. Doesn't matter if it's a Facebook group or something that's on like Mighty Networks, or if it's, an anthology and everybody's connecting through email or Zoom. It doesn't make any difference what you're doing, but when you start to build that community, that's a big piece. Um, and that idea, sounded like it was a fairly new one. Have you begun that process yet with anybody, or is this like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm
so
putting this
I
in motion on this date?
no, I've sent out invites for the last few weeks and I've been getting some interest. You know, I get some authors who are actually a little more established. They've got a readership base and they're not so interested. When I pitch this to some of the newer authors who don't have much of a readership yet, they're all over it. They're excited about it. And so, yeah, they're working on putting together their short stories. I've given them a kind of a quasi deadline. You know, I'm going to do each book with, 15 to 20 short stories in there and I think and that's also another way that I've been able to work on collaborations too because I talked to this one editing company, and they are when I first approached them, they were one of my first interviews as a guest on there, and
Hmm.
I approached them and said, "Hey, I like what you guys are doing. Let's start collaborating." And it wasn't just, "Can I be a guest on your show?" It was, let's work together and develop a relationship. And from that, I've been able to get guests from theirs. I've been able to refer work their way. And yeah, it's been kind of fun trying to actually build up relationships along the way.
Wonderful. That's one of the best parts about podcasting in general, frankly, is the networking and building relationships like that, especially. So I love that you're getting into that. The anthology is a fantastic idea. I just I can't give you enough kudos for that because it's just, it's creative and it's a great angle on building some sort of community and it really applies to your niche that you're in. So really looking forward to seeing where that takes you in the future. I think it's going to be awesome. I like to ask a corny question of
Sure.
everybody when they come on the show, and
I'm
so
all
I'm going
about
to hit you with
corny.
that. Yeah, it's corny. Here we go.
All right.
So put on the seatbelt, get ready. It's really difficult. When it comes to doing the podcast, just the podcast alone. When it comes to
Uh-huh.
doing the podcast, what is it about doing your podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing your podcast that you just absolutely throw it out the window, can't stand, hate the most?
The part that I love the most is actually talking to the people. I I didn't realize that I would like that because I've been so introverted most of my life. I never thought that talking to people on, I mean, even if it's across Zoom like this. I mean, I used to be the guy who, if a girl sat down at my table in school, I would be done with my lunch immediately. I wouldn't say a word, just pick my tray up,
Oh,
dump it in the
wow.
garbage, and walk away because I just turned beet red in the face. I didn't know what to do. I always struggled with talking to people, but that was one thing I had to work on. But as I've been doing the podcast, I've been realizing that it doesn't matter if you're introvert or extrovert, getting to know people has been incredibly rewarding and just learning from them and hearing their experiences. It's been really fun. I've really like right now, I enjoy talking to you and I get that the person who talks the most ends up feeling the most rewarded when they leave, but at the same time when I'm interviewing somebody, I I really do enjoy what they're telling me and it's taught me how to listen to people better and as I've worked on listening to people better, I've gotten a lot more out of our conversations also. And so that's been a lot of fun.
That's
Um,
awesome.
to say what the worst part was about it,
Hmm.
that's a good question. I think the worst part about it for me, I think it's the prep. So when I put together my podcasts, I go through their profile. Like I enjoy some of the prep, but not all of the prep. Because I put out an agenda to my guests every single podcast that I do with them. I go through and I say, okay, given who they are, their experiences, what questions should I be asking them that would both be good for them to answer and also relate to the audience I'm trying to build. And that is the hardest part. The easiest part of the whole prep work is when I actually sit down before the podcast. I usually spend about an hour. I'll go through all their websites, all their information they have online, and then I will, if I still have time, I'll download their books if they have a book, if that's the type of guest I'm interviewing, and I'll start reading their books until the interview starts. And so I like that part of it. But yeah, putting together those agendas sometimes is a bit of a challenge because if I really wanted to, I could get sucked into a trap on there and just spend an hour or more just trying to nail that down. But yeah, not knowing very much of them in advance and trying to put together that agenda is grueling.
Got it. Great answers to the question. I appreciate that very much. That's why I keep asking this corny question because I get good answers to it from
Doesn't
people.
sound like a
So
corny question. It sounds like an honest question.
the I hear a lot from people about the time they spend editing, and people who know me who have listened to my show they know that I am like anti-editing. I just
Right.
think it's awful. Um, what's your take on it? I mean, you're fairly new to it, of course, but I mean, are you an edit until my fingers bleed type of guy, or are you like, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it?
So you and I had a small conversation about this several weeks back, and you actually changed a lot of how I thought about it. And at the time, I was spending several hours editing each episode. I was taking out every pause, every stutter, things that weren't relevant. Uh, and because of you, I actually decided, you know what? The podcast portion of this, I'm going to just put it up raw. I mean, I might send it through a filter to enhance any audio if it needs that, and I'll put my jingle at the front and the outro at the back. But other than that, I keep it pretty raw now. And then for my videos, I was doing the same, but maybe a little more work to it. Um, but then I guess this is where I probably diverged from that that style because I now put in way more time editing the video portion of it than I did before because I'm like you said, I'm breaking them into segments and then I'm adding my hooks, my intros, my intermediary commentaries, getting all the B-roll, getting the transitions, the sound effects. I mean, I'm putting a lot of effort into the YouTube videos now, and so yeah, I would I'd say that the editing has gotten pretty outrageous. I've still had fun with it, but it's become a bigger mountain.
Well, first, let me just say I appreciate you giving me some credit there. And if something I said to you helped you in some way, that just it fills me up. I'm really glad to hear that. In terms of trying to leave at least the audio portion just authentic and just put it up there, save yourself some time.
Yep.
So I'm glad. I love hearing that. And as far as the video goes, baby steps. You know what I mean? Baby steps.
Yeah.
You were editing everything. Now you've kind of let go of the audio a little bit. You will be able to let go of some of that video in a little while too. Just just keep going down the road, keep putting one foot in front of the other and baby steps. I get the feeling you're like I am in a lot of ways, a little bit of a control freak.
A little bit. I mean, I tend to like to do a lot of it on my own, so maybe.
Yeah. I took somebody's advice. I took a break once and I brought in a VA to help me with some stuff. And the disaster that followed was nowhere near worth the little bit of time that I got to sort of relax because even when I was relaxing, I was worried about what this person was doing.
Right.
And oh my goodness, so many things got dropped. I'll never do it again. Seven podcasts, and I do every single piece of it myself. I can't let anybody do anything. So I get it. I get the mindset. Let me ask you this: as you're putting all this stuff together, where do you see the podcast going? Like, what's your goal for what this podcast is going to look like in, say, 6 months or a year, or maybe it's at 50 episodes, or that type of thing.
Well, I think everything I do, I'm very business oriented in everything I do, and so and well, I say that, and yet I'm doing something that makes no money. But my vision for everything is to eventually have an income off of it. I envision the podcast to end up having enough followers that I can have a way for that to not only pay for itself, but to thrive and something that I could probably even hire maybe an assistant to help me with. I see the YouTube sort of similar, building up that to a point where I can get monetized on YouTube and start being able to uh, just to bring in any kind of income through that. Yeah, I'm promoting my books and things through these things, and as I get more listeners, more people who want to follow me, I feel like I'll be able to get more readers out of that too. They're not all going to be readers because a lot of people are just going to want their own stuff. But yeah, the books they will eventually maybe help support me through buying the books. But also, like I've said, I'm a filmmaker. I want to make movies, and
Mhm.
one of the things that I'm doing is building a film studio, and that's under construction and under development right now. But I would love for my audience to be able to share with their friends and family the movies that I end up putting out. And I mean, that's probably the big end goal is just to find an audience that appreciates what I'm doing.
Nice.
The
Great
money, I'm
answer.
financially secure. I don't need to make money from anything. I would love to, because I can take the money I make and funnel that back into help, so that I'm not doing it all, so I can focus more on the art. And that, I think that's what I would do. And if I was able to get the monetization, is to put better quality content out there without having to spend as much time personally doing it all.
Great vision. I love that. Fantastic answer. And thanks for sharing that.
I came
I'm
up
looking
with it on
forward
the
to
fly.
what's that? Okay. Well, it was still a great answer. All right. Even
It's
if you
the
just
true answer. It's the true answer too.
that's the authentic stuff's always the best. See what I'm telling you? Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I love it. Okay. Hey, before I have one more question for you before we wrap it up, though, tell everybody how they can reach you, how they can find your books, contact you, the whole bit.
Yeah, sure, sure. So, uh, my name is Brent Lindstrom. You can find me at lightmindedarts.com. It's the same for the podcast. It's the same for the YouTube channel, Lightminded Arts. And my books, if you want to give them a try, I will. In fact, because you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to give you my book for free, just so that you can get a feel for who I am, what kind of fiction I write,
Oh my
and maybe
gosh.
you'll become a fan. So just head over to my website, fill out my contact form, mention Podcaster Nation, and I'll give you a free book.
Nice. All right. I'm going to put that in the show notes. Hold on. Let me make a note of that. Let's see. So free book. Got it.
And depending when you're listening to it, I got this one up for free right now, but I'm going to end that one here soon. As soon as this gets released, then I'll give this one away for free. And so, yeah, that's gonna happen for at least till I get about 50 reviews on Amazon, at least.
Okay. So just to be clear, the book that you're giving away to folks if they come in and fill out the form and everything is the hard-boiled cabbage book?
Yeah,
Okay.
if they're coming after I release that, which is the 1st of March.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. I can't imagine this is going to be out before then, but hey, you never know. Weird things happen with the podcasting world. So,
Yep.
all right, brother.
If you do it before March, it might be one for the money, two for the soul.
Perfect. Well, either way, they're going to be happy because I've had a chance to read, quite a bit of that one, and yeah, they're going to like that one too. Very unique. I don't want to get into it right now, unfortunately, because I don't have time. But it's a very unique storyline in that one. People, you need to look that one up, folks. Very unique storylines. This guy, Brent. Let me ask you this last question. I know that you haven't been doing this for a long time, but you have gone through a lot in doing this, and you've already come up with some creative solutions. You've encountered some issues you had to kind of overcome. What is your best piece of advice for podcasters who are out there who simply aren't where you are yet?
I would say just keep trying. I'm a workaholic. I love to, I grew up poor. I had a paper route before I was a teenager. I started working on a framing crew when I was 13. I've learned the value of working hard, but I've also failed hard too. I've lost $500,000 in a single business venture. I've lost lots of money in the stock market. I've had wins, I've had losses, and I would say just keep that drive alive. Keep looking for ways to improve and get better, because that's how you get better. It's not gonna come to you. You got to create your own karma, I guess.
Great, great advice. I appreciate you sharing that too. All right, folks. Goodness gracious, accomplished author, father and husband. This guy he's doing it all. He's the future filmmaker over here, and he is the host of the Light-Minded Arts Podcast. Brent Lindstrom. Brent, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing everything you did, and goodness, just for telling your story, man. I appreciate you being on today.
Oh, hey, no problem. And one other piece of advice: watch the next episode of Podcaster Nation, because he's giving you good he's giving you good content here. So that's my only other bit of advice.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you for the shameless plug. I love it. I absolutely love it. Folks, that's been another fantastic episode of the Podcaster Nation. And folks, the reason that we have such powerful podcasters come on here with these great messages is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by a podcaster. That's right. Folks, this is the place, which we said before, and I proved it again today. This is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.